Let me ask you about the tremendous hurt in this country. There are 30 million Americans who are unemployed. You don't need me to tell you that. We're expecting the new unemployment rate this week. There have been forecasts 15, 16, 17%. One of your advisors projected an unemployment rate of 19%. That's nearly 1 in 5 Americans without a job. How bad is this going to get?
Well, that is what it is.
It's debate week, so the Biden campaign is reminding voters about the former president's lack of understanding about the economy and the results of his cluelessness.
Well, look, I think you've got to, first of all, take a step back and look at what President Biden has done for the economy. He's created over 15 million jobs. GDP has been at a record high. Unemployment's been low, especially among Black Americans and Hispanic Americans. So you will see President Biden talking about his accomplishments, but you're also going to hear him talk about not only what his plans are for the future, how he's going to continue to lower costs for American families, but also what is Donald Trump's plan for the economy. I mean, he and his MAGA allies practically cheered, jumped up and down when inflation started going up as a result of a once-in-a-generation pandemic. So what is his plan? You're going to hear President Biden talk about that. And he's also going to make the case for the American people that he is fighting for them. He's fighting for their economic freedom. He's fighting for their freedom across the board, versus Donald Trump, who simply wants to get back into the White House to seek political retribution on his enemies and, frankly, to keep himself out of jail.
When your campaign consists of age-related insults and empty slogans about Bidenomics, there's no wonder Trump openly admits to refusing to prepare for the debate. It doesn't take any planning to regurgitate the same insults to avoid talking about his record and predictions about what his policies would do to the economy again. So while his policy is to simply give away more of our money to corporations and the wealthy, those rich folks know how damaging it would end up being to their money.
Bob, while we got you, I got to ask you about a headline. It came across my desk this morning from Axios reporting there are 0 Fortune 100 CEOs that are supporting or have donated to former President Donald Trump this election cycle. They cite some data compiled by Yale's Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. Is this a big deal?
Yeah. You know you're in trouble when the richest people that actually run the country through their purchase of our politicians refuse to support you.
We look back into the data, and we're looking at this now for the last 4 months. We've been pointing out that there are no Fortune 500 CEOs who are supporting former President Trump, and that is a historic break going back to William Howard Taft and through Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan and the Bushes and everything. Is that it's been anywhere from 40 to 60% public and financial support. It's 0 now, and it was 0 in 2016. And the Trump economic package frightens them. It's extremely inflationary. The tariffs, 10% across the board on all imports, that's just crazy. It'll lead to a 3% increase for sure in inflation and plunging the GDP. Right. And that's before retaliatory gestures. The increase in the deficit, he wants to cut $5 trillion of taxes with no commensurate cut in expenditures. So these are problems. He doesn't believe in the independence
but
of the Fed.
what do you say to the CEOs? There's a lot of CEOs who are watching us now, probably watching you speaking, saying, but you know what? I don't like the Biden administration when it comes to the regulatory regime right now. I worry about the tax policy and what's going to happen if the Trump taxes roll off in 2025 and what that debate looks like. I mean, there are folks, as you said, 70% of the CEO community, Republicans. Do they turn out to be reluctant Biden voters? Do they not vote at all? I mean, where do you think they land?
They'll be reluctant Biden voters. They don't want the fabric of society pulled apart.
And despite paying politicians to allow them to operate with fewer regulations and lower taxes, these CEOs still need the rest of our society to not be beaten down so badly that they can no longer siphon every dime possible from us. I guess they found a reason to limit their greed.
ARK Investment CEO Cathie Wood plans to vote for Donald Trump in November, saying that he is the best candidate to handle the economy. So why are more on Wall Street rallying behind the former president? Is that it? Better for the economy? Let's get reaction now from O'Leary Ventures Chairman Kevin O'Leary. Great to have you, Kevin. Listen, does this just come down to less taxation and less regulation?
Well, you got to think about it this way. Only 12 months ago, you would have never had Wall Street executives endorsing Trump. They have now understood what his policies are going to look like versus what they have already. And they're starting to make decisions exactly on that.
So one CEO supporting Trump's destructive policies is enough for this expert to conclude that he's on the right track. And it comes after it was widely reported that during Trump's private meeting with the rich people that he hopes to serve, he embarrassed himself.
Hey, some of the words that were used, you heard Andrew, meandering, all over the map, doesn't know what he's talking about, could not keep a straight thought. I mean, some in the C-suite seem reportedly baffled by the former president's incoherence during the private meeting.
He doesn't have to be informed about anything to give them never-ending tax cuts. But when he doesn't even understand what his extreme policies will do, they start to worry. It just leaves a few folks left that are impressed by the meandering meeting where he showed he has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, some of this hangover inflation, this sticky inflation in housing, protein, and food and energy is because, and I think economists are starting to agree with this statement, we probably printed too much money post-pandemic. CHIPS and Science Act, Inflation Reduction Act never reduced inflation. It's $1 trillion plus of printed money coming out of free helicopters in the sky. It's very inflationary, and it's kind of hard to turn that spigot off now, and it's coming to roost at a time when the incumbent really doesn't want inflation on kitchen table issues. I mean, the food inflation, the 32% since pre-pandemic prices on proteins like chicken and steak, that's a killer. It's a killer because everybody sees it every day, whether you buy fast food or whether you cook it at home yourself. And of course, wage inflation is starting to shut down casual dining all over the country.
When workers and consumers are only seen as sources for even more record profits on top of the tax cuts corporations receive, they'll use everyday Americans' wage growth as an excuse to gouge consumers even further. But again, economists point out that Trump is proposing even more to hurt the middle class.
The former president has a set of tariffs that are incredibly sweeping and the opposite of targeted. On 60%, a 60% tariff on everything from China and 10% on all imports. Now, let's stop calling it a tariff. Let's call it a tax. It is a tax on consumer spending that will hit middle-class families and have exactly the opposite effect on inflation of everything we've talked about so far in this president's agenda. We are working hard to lower costs in prescription drugs and all the areas we've talked about, and Republicans want to repeal those rules, which of course would mean higher prices in the area of health care, in the area of energy, in the area of housing and China and child care, certainly in health care coverage. And then on top of that, add a massive sweeping set of tariffs, which are a sales tax for consumers, highly regressive, hit the middle class hard, and highly inflationary. Even estimates by former members of the Trump team tell us that that will raise inflation.
A lot of the discussions on the economy and how each policy affects people's paychecks, tax rates, job security, and cost of living are hard to decipher when so many experts and economists disagree on varying factors. It doesn't help that many times our perspectives are based on the political figures that we generally prefer rather than analyzing what their policies have done and will do. Sometimes, even though the messenger is telling the truth, we won't believe it, which mainly harms the Americans least connected and least powerful.
His other big decision was a tax bill that gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. The worst job creation record since Herbert Hoover. At the same time, Joe Biden's under his leadership, the public and private sector working together, 15 million jobs created. Back to the kitchen table. What's his name says Obamacare sucks. I hate using that language, but not that much. Obamacare sucks. No, it doesn't suck. It cures. And Joe Biden has taken us to a place where we have expanded subsidies to lower cost for more people, and in the IRA bill, taking the cost of insulin from $500-600 a month to $35 a month for seniors on Medicare. So the cost of living, when we talk about it, we're concerned about it, but we also understand that access to health care and prescription drugs is an important part of that.